Alright, let's see if the sound's working on this. Alright, it's working. Alright, 3. Starting from the bank boiler. If the boiler pressure is 180 psi G or more, bank fire starts to burn, the stack jet are turned off. It's possible that the fire boiler was without attaching the roundhouse steam as follows. Check the drum level, check the boiler, so control air pressure, puller, 30 psi gauge on supply. Gauge on, pressure control AC 1002, the switcher selector valve, the handle control for selected zero control pressure gauge D. The cocks, the fireman's console at the engine station should be set as follows. Cold pump AV 1016 on, stack jets off, stroker shut off on, main feed pump on, emergency feed pump off. Pump the grease into the gray bearings. Check all the manually operated valves according to the table C entitled the valve checklist. The normal operation bank started, except for the S244, which always should remain open in valve. The S8645 slowly at the start of the auxiliary locating oil pump. Make sure the inner outer fire doors are shut down. Then starting boiler and blower using selector valve AV 1013 on hand. Nova. Leaving the inner fire door opens reduces the draft through the quick references of the valve handle. Wheels are colored as coded as green valve normally open red valve normally closed, yellow valve normally open, partially open, control. While making the above valve check of the following valves should be open and blown free of the condensed steam, then close the valve. They are SH640, SH642, SH641, SH639, SH638, and S20. Valve SH636 should be blocked from free of condensed steam and left crack. Close all the valves in stroker jet manifold S209. Open the master valve S206 with the start P at 4 gallon PSI gauge on the gauge of the DA stroke selector valve. Check for the plug stroke jets and by opening and closing each of the valves separately. If the pressure remains on the gauge after the valve is shut, jet is plunged open. Open any of the gauge pullage jets before proceeding. Note if there will be delay to the blower selector valve to the zero control pressure to conserve the steam. Set joker sets for the set joker jets for evenly cold distribution. Note approximately setting with the jets are left to right with the facing 10, 16, 16, 16, 16, 16, 10 psi gauge. While the blower on the turner stroke with the selector valve with the 10 psi gauge of the pressure gauge D, we'll start with the stroker. Open the valve S244 on the opalite grate with the driving reducing valve grate drive. Should operate. Note that the drain condenses with a cylinder from the drain valves provided open slice jet valve. The S248 check the flow of the plug jets and then close after the grate drive runs the turn stroke with the selector valve 6 psi gauge. Great driver shell stop, then furnace turbulators on, turn on the turbulator jets. Note if necessary for the conserve of the steam valve S44 should be closed open later when the steam pressure is above 300 psi gauge. Fire is necessary using the stroker selector of the valve. Observe the spread of the coal over the grate and adjust the stroker jets for even the coal distribution during the period of the raising of the steam pressure from 100 to 300 psi gauge. It is necessary for frequently adjusting the master valve S206 for the stroker jets for the auxiliary steam pressure is continuously riding normally pressure 250 psi gauge. During this period until the controls are switched to automatic, the drum water level is controlled by the feed water selector on the hand. If the water level is too high at start, it may be lowered down by using an emergency blow down push button AB 1020 on the fireman's console. Check the emergency feed water pump holding the push button AB 1102 and AB 1101 until the feed water gauge gives the telltale release the AB 1102 as the pump should be running. Release the AB 1101 after being satisfied with the emergency pumping is running as indicated by the fluctuation of the water pressure gauge. Switch ash jets on the AE 1018. Wait for the timer to operate with its ash jets for the check of the operation with a hand push for the buttons AB 1044, AB 1064 mounted on the boiler front. Note that the timing cycle is 10 minutes for the blowing period of the 10 seconds. It will be 5 minutes before the first blowing period. Set the pressure control pointer at the 300 psi gauge. Fire at the steady rate with the order to increase the pressure with the 300 psi gauge. Lay off the stroker feed with the blower to maintain the pressure, setting the feed water and selector valve to maintain the drum level at the center of the gauge glass. Switch The selector valve to automatic control with the following order with the feed, water, blower, stroker, and the above. The procedure is based on starting from the bank condition of the 180 psi gauge. Starting pressure is higher set for the pressure control pointer at some of the higher pressures at 300 psi gauge and switch to the automatic control at pressure. The set point at red should match the gauge at the pointer black. Increase the boiler pressure at 450 psi gallons, changing the pressure control set with the point set not more than 20 psi gauge. Note, do not change the set point enough to cause the loading of the pressure gauge to go through beyond 20 psi gauge. Wait after each of the changes until the loading pressure reaches equilibrium, then change the set point again. Start the power turbine, bring the boiler up to 550 psi gallons, and adjust the proportion combination air for the choke field with a knob on the boiler boiler, blow boiler controller with a normal setting with a mark with a pencil with an index scale. If there no case, go below 1 or over 5 on the scale. Routine boiler operation 4.